Hello, everyone, and welcome again to another episode of Papa's Tackle Box. We're very grateful that you're joining us on whatever platform that you get your podcast needs from. Thanks to everyone who's been following us and keeping up with everything that we're doing on Facebook, Instagram, or even our website, legacycc.org. Also, a huge shout out to those who have given to the podcast through our website under the Give Now tab. Now, I know you all are waiting to hear what Papa's going to pull out of his tackle box today, so without wasting any more time, you are listening to Papa's Tackle Box, and here's Papa.
Hey, thanks for joining me today as I reach in my tackle box and I'm going to pull out 1 Peter chapter 4 verse 12. Don't be surprised at the fiery trials you're going through. New Living Translation. So today I want to talk to you, don't give up in the middle. God never promised us that we would go through life without opposition, without disappointments, or without things we don't understand. Nothing that's happened to you has stopped His plan for your life. He still has every intention of bringing to pass what He promised you. And when you first got the promise, the start is fun. And when you get the promise, you know how it's going to end. That's exciting. But in the middle, it sure can get messy. My question to you today is, will you have faith in the middle of the journey called life to keep going? Will you have faith when it's not happening as though it would and it feels like you're going in the wrong direction? So let me give you some tips today from some lessons that I have learned over the course of my life in this journey that I call life. Tip number 1. God doesn't give us all the details when He gives us the promise. He'll give you the promise, that's the starting point, and He shows you the end. But He won't show you the middle. If He told us what it was going to take for this promise to come to pass, I think we'd talk ourselves right out of it. An angel appeared to a teenage girl named Mary, told her that she was highly favored of God. You will have a baby without knowing a man, and he will be the Messiah, the Savior of the world. Now, God showed her the starting point and the end, not the middle. She would be the mother of Christ, and I'm sure she was excited. I believe at the same time she was finding it hard to believe. But I can hear Mary years later saying, God, you didn't tell me that having this baby was going to cause my fiance to want to call off our engagement, or that I would have this baby in a manger with smelly animals. God, you didn't tell me I would have to live on the run for 2 years, hiding my baby from King Herod, and that my son would be mistreated, betrayed, and mocked, and that I would have to watch him be crucified and die a painful death. You see, God doesn't give us all the details, and what you're going through right now in your life may be difficult. You don't like it. It doesn't make sense to you. Are you going to give up, take yourself out of it? Too many obstacles, never's going to happen? Or are you going to do as Mary did and say, God, I don't understand this, but God, I know you're still on the throne. I'm not going to quit believing. I'm going to have faith in the middle. I'm not going to get discouraged by this process because I'm understanding and seeing the middle can get messy. See, God gave Joseph a dream. He showed him the end, not the middle. He didn't show him that his brothers would get jealous, put him in a pit, then sell him into slavery. Then he's accused wrongly, and then he's put in prison. Don't get discouraged by the process. David could have said, God, you promised me to be king. I've had to face a giant. King Saul has tried to kill me. My own son turned against me, tried to take the throne after I got there. You didn't tell me all these things. See, the heroes of faith in the Old Testament had one common denominator. They had faith in the middle when it looked impossible, when the promise seemed far off, they kept moving forward. They had their moments because they're human. At times when they worried, they doubted, but they didn't allow it to stop them. They believed the promise would happen. Second tip that I'd like to leave with you today is when you're in the middle, remind yourself it's temporary. When you end up in the middle of the promise God gave you, you know the destination because you know where you're going because you're en route, you're in process. When God brought the Israelites out of slavery, they were headed toward the promised land, a land that flowed with milk and honey. God showed them their destination. He got them started on their way, but in the middle, He didn't abandon them and just say, hey, you're on your own. I got you started now, you finish it. God provided for them blessings in the form of manna. He also provided blessings in the form of quail. He provided blessings in the form of water for them to drink, a cloud by day and a fire by night. When Pharaoh came chasing them, they came to a dead end at the Red Sea, nowhere to go. God parted the sea. He was showing them, us also, I'm not just the God of the start, I'm not just the God of the finish, I'm the God in the middle. I will bring you through. There may be a Red Sea in your path. It might look impossible. It may look that odds are against you. The Bible says, when you go through deep waters, I will be with you. When you go through the rivers, you will not drown. When you go through the fire, you won't be burned. The flames will not consume you. You may feel like you're in the fire right now. You may think you're in the flame, or maybe you're in a famine. God is saying, you're not staying there. You're just going through it. It's temporary. The trouble is not permanent. It's not going to last. But if you give in to it and let it overwhelm you with discouragement, you'll settle there. And what should have been temporary becomes permanent. David said it this way, when I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, he didn't say I stay there in the valley, set up camp, build my house in the valley, when I walk through the valley. What he was saying is this, the valley's not my home. I'm not settling in the middle, even though I don't understand it. I'm not going to settle in the valley. Paul said in Ephesians, put on the whole armor of God so that in the days of trouble you can stand. So Paul is telling us we're going to have days of trouble, days of difficulties. But the God who said there will be days of trouble said there will be a day when that trouble comes to an end, because trouble has an expiration date. Mark chapter 4, Jesus had finished teaching. It was late in the day, and he said, let's go to the other side of the lake. They got in the boat. Along the way, they were caught in a storm. In the darkness of the night, the disciples thought the boat was going to capsize. They were in a panic. Now, I believe that Jesus already knew that there was going to be a storm. Therefore, he knew that those hurricane force winds couldn't keep them from getting to their destiny to the other side. All the forces of darkness can't keep you from getting to the other side. If he would have thought they were going to die, he would have got up without having to be woke up. Maybe what you're in right now. And you seem to can't get his attention because he's asleep. Maybe he knows that you can handle it. And he wouldn't have allowed it if he was going to stop your destiny. Because you have the most powerful force in the universe on your side. Don't get discouraged by the process. When I was in college, I was privileged to sing at one of the chapel services. During the song, the microphone made a loud squeal, and then the whole sound system just quit. My voice teacher had instilled into me that no matter whatever happens, you keep singing. Listen, you can't control everything that happens to you. Just keep singing. Just be your best. Trust God to take care of the rest. He's not just the God of the start or the finish, He is the God in the middle. Psalms 138. The Lord will work out His plans for my life. It doesn't say that we have to work out our plans, make things happen. The God who spoke worlds into existence has promised He will work out His plans for our lives. Right now, if you're in the middle, He's behind the scenes, working out His plan for your life, arranging things. In the middle, Joseph could have said, it's not going to work out. I'm never going to lead a nation. I'm in prison. David could have said, I'll never take the throne. I'm nothing but just a shepherd boy. God is not dependent on what you don't have. You may not be able to figure out how your dream and promise will come to pass. You're not in it on your own. You're not doing life by yourself. The Heavenly Father is working out His plans for your life.
Hey, Papa, thanks for those tips.
Oh, you're welcome.
If you're new to the podcast, recently we've started asking Papa questions on his, encouragement and what he's pulling out of his tackle box. And I have one thought about while you were talking, and it's the idea that, God won't give you anything more than you can handle.
Okay.
And because that is the middle, right? You're talking about God shows you the beginning, He shows you the end, but the middle details are sometimes blurry.
Right.
But people say, God won't give you anything more than you can handle. And I was talking with a couple friends the other day, and a lot of people we believe, but you can talk to this. We believe that a lot of people take that verse slightly out of context, and because they're saying that anything that comes your way, you can handle it. But if that was true, there would be no reason for God, right? So the better way to understand that is God won't give you anything more than you can handle, in the sense that you're leaning on God to get through whatever that situation is.
Well, sure. You know, when the enemy came, or when the Satan, Lucifer, said to God, if you let me grab a hold of Job and let me do these things to him, he will curse you. So God really knew how much that Job could handle.
Right.
So I think sometimes we do take things out of context and we make them say things that they really don't say. But I do believe that God puts us in situations and things to make us grow and mature. And so as we mature, maybe the difficulties get a little harder.
Right. Absolutely. And when those difficulties get harder, it pushes us to lean more
Yes.
on God
Yes.
to get through them.
Yes.
Absolutely. So
how can you know that God can heal you of cancer if He never healed you of just a toothache?
right.
So that's my philosophy.
Yeah,
You got to start somewhere.
Absolutely. You got to start somewhere. And so what would you say to somebody who's currently in the middle? And let's just give an example. They are a very detailed oriented, like I have to have X, Y, and Z planned out.
OCD.
Right? We all know those people.
Yes.
So what would you say to that person who is in the middle and doesn't have all the details? Because I think sometimes as pastors, we say, I've done it. We just say, well, you just got to have faith. You just got to believe, right? But that's easy for us to say,
Yes.
but how does that actually get lived out for somebody who actually struggles with that?
First of all, is that a person that's like that wants all the details because they are a detail oriented person, we have to go back to the Bible that God doesn't do things our way, that his thoughts are not our thoughts. And so, one of the first things as a child of God, and we may want the details because we're afraid of moving forward if we don't have the details of all, because that takes faith to step out on something that we don't have all the details to. But I think sometimes that God intentionally does not show us everything and tell us everything. And he puts us there so we have to lean more on him, because if we've got all the details already intact and we've got it all mapped out and planned out, I wouldn't need God to help me through it because I've already designed it and I can do it myself.
Right. And so that brings us back to kind of what we were just talking about of, God's not going to give you anything more than you can handle. Because, again, if he did, right, then you wouldn't need God.
Right.
So, it seems like a lot of what we're talking about is kind of focusing around that singular idea of no matter if you're in the beginning, if you're at the end, or if you're in the middle, right, if you don't have that central focus being God, you're not going to get through any of it.
Right. So it'd be like Abraham. God gave Abraham a promise, but then by the time he gets to really do this promise comes about, he's too old, and he says that his wife is too old to bear children. So now, who is he depending on to get a promise that God has promised? He has to totally depend on the promise of God, because he's saying his body's already dead now, and that he's not going to be able to produce a child. So he's forced
Right.
to trust God that promise. And so that's really the whole premise is that God may have made you a promise, but you're not going to be able to make that promise happen. He's going to fulfill it in you because he's promised you something. It'll come about. But in the middle of it, it gets messy. And what is the mess doing? It's trying to help us mature and grow up and be a better disciple. So when we talk about being a fishers of men, so how can we help other people get through their problems if we haven't got through any problems? And I know we say you just trust God and you get through it, but having faith, and everybody has faith because he
Right.
said he'd give us a measure of faith, but our faith is built because I think the Lord takes us through these places where we have to trust him.
Yeah,
That
and when we're in the middle and it's getting messy, that's the word you've been using. There's that I've heard a couple of different pastors say, like, you turn your mess into a message.
okay?
And so kind of going through that messy time really helps us
Yes.
as believers and as Christians be able to strengthen our own testimony. I think you talked about that a couple weeks ago is the power of a testimony.
Yes.
And because our testimony is getting strengthened and we can share that with more people, then our scope of people that we can like minister to and share the gospel with has just widened greatly.
Yes. Well, let me throw this thought in there too. Sometimes we look at people that are in ministry, or sometimes we look at people that are in a corporation or a business and we think, yeah, they just, boy, did they fall into a good spot. Sometimes we don't know their whole story, what it took to get to where they are, and we don't see all the problems and the messes that they went through in their life to get to where they are. And if we can produce the promise ourselves, then when we get to it, what are we going to boast in? Look what I did. But since we can't produce the promise ourselves that God has promised to us, when we get to the end of it, who gets the credit? He does. Look what he did in my life.
That's absolutely right. Well, thanks, Papa, again for sharing with us these life lessons that you're pulling out of your tackle box. And thank you for just letting me sit down and ask you some questions about it.
Hey, well, thanks for letting me answer some of those questions. I see it's time for me to reel it in. So until next time, keep fishing.
Hey, thanks everyone for listening to Papa's Tackle Box. Make sure that you stay up to date with everything we're doing by following our Facebook page at Legacy Community Church. Go ahead and follow us on Instagram at Legacy Church FL. And don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, Legacy Community Church. You can also keep up to date with everything we're doing at our website, legacycc.org. And if this podcast has blessed you in any way, you can also give through our website under the Give Now tab. Thanks for listening.